Welcome back to Making the Jump podcast, where we chat all things business, entrepreneurship and property. I'm Kafalat.
And I'm Rebecca, and we're here to journey with you as you make the jump into something you absolutely love.
Thank you for having us. It's great to be here.
We've got an amazing couple with us today, Kafalat. We've got Sam and Hannah Haig. All the way from Preston city centre, tuning in. Kafalat, whereabouts in the country are you?
So I'm in Southampton. So,
Amazing.
Yeah, you can't get further south than where I'm at.
True.
Definitely. Well, we're super excited to have you guys on today. Sam and Hannah are good friends of mine and my husband Dave's. We've known them for maybe a good 4 years now. We were part of their church, and they have got an incredible story and fingers in lots of different pies. So, Kafalat, I'm going to hand over to you to kick off with some questions, maybe a bit of an introduction so we can get to know Sam and Hannah.
Yeah, it's literally just let us know your background. Like, where did you come from?
Yeah. That's a great place to start, definitely.
Yeah.
From a big question.
Yeah, I know,
we'll
right?
try and keep it super brief as well for people listening. And firstly, just to say we're so pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us onto the podcast. We love talking to people who have made similar leaps in career. So yeah, my name's Sam. I'm originally from West Yorkshire. I trained as a vicar. That was my main profession for the last 12 years. And we lived in Cambridge and London for a long time before moving to Preston it's 5 years ago now, to relaunch a church called Preston Minster, which is quite old and historic, but had declined in number over a period of time. And we relaunched that church a few years ago. So that was our main focus and main reason for coming to Preston. We're not from here originally.
Yeah, absolutely. My family moved around a lot. I met Sam in West Yorkshire when we were teenagers. We got married very young, had our first baby just before I turned 21. So I have spent my whole adult life being a mum. It's a very new season now. Up until the last 2 or 3 years, I've been very much full-time mum, but now we've in business together.
Nice.
That is wonderful. And Hannah, where did you grow up?
Well, all over. My parents were medical. My dad was a doctor in Pakistan for my first sort of up to 10. So we lived sort of between London and Pakistan up to 10, and then moved up to West Yorkshire after that point.
Lovely.
Can you speak the language?
I don't. I went to a school when I was 5, and a local school, and I think I learnt a lot of language then. But after that, I was always kind of mixing with other English-speaking children and didn't really get it, unfortunately. My dad is fluent now, and he just stops in the street and speaks Urdu, and it's lovely.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. Amazing. And okay, so Sam, you touched on the fact that you have been a vicar for the last 12 years until recently. Can we hear a little bit about that? What drew you to become a vicar? And then what drew you out of being a vicar?
Yes, that is a great question. So I basically had quite a major life transformation when I was 18. So that was around the time that Hannah and I met. And I didn't grow up going to church regularly. That wasn't a part of my life at all until the age of 18, when a friend of mine actually invited me along to church. And I sort of committed my life to becoming a Christian. And that was a huge part of my life, a massive transformational moment, really. And the most kind of natural thing to do was to want to be involved in some type of profession that encapsulated like the most important aspect of my life, which is my faith in Jesus. So I became a Christian and began very quickly exploring the whole job of being a vicar and what that entailed and what it looked like and what you had to do and so on. It just it really gripped me. And it took about 2 or 3 years to get to like the interview stage. But we eventually got there. And I became a vicar when I was probably about 26, I think. So it's quite a long time. I mean, you have to train for 3 years. And a little bit more about my background. I left school at 16 with no GCSEs. I had no real aspiration to go to university or anything like that. I was a mechanic before I was a vicar. I'd done jobs on building sites, in factories and things like that. Really, really basic stuff, but fun stuff. And
important stuff, Sam. Very important. We all need cars fixing, and we need products from factories.
Absolutely.
Some skills that are re-emerging now in different ways. And I became a vicar, and part of that process is going off to Cambridge University to sort of train. So real life transformation, personally in terms of my faith, but then also in terms of moving from, I guess, a non-academic background into more of an academic background. And then, so that really has been the last 12 years of our life. And it's looked different for both of us in different seasons. But we had, just a feeling really that perhaps a season away from the paid job of being a vicar might be something that was a good and healthy thing for us to do. And I really felt that for me personally. And that was alongside as well a real interest in business and entrepreneurship.
Yes.
In property investment and just, I mean, when I sort of took on the job of leading the church in Preston, at Preston Minster, a lot of that was around how to actually run a healthy organization. And I really loved that aspect of it. And also leading a healthy organization and leading a staff team and things like that. So I think I was really interested in that kind of stuff. And that's what really drew me, I guess, to step away from my profession of the last 12 years and to step into something new, which is sort of around the world of business. We run a coffee and donut shop in Preston. We're launching another site. We've got a few properties and things like that. So very much sort of stepping out of our comfort zone in that way.
Yeah.
And what is it, Sam, that gives you that drive? Where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think there's probably, I know you probably might know more than me, but it kind of, as in, I don't know, as in sometimes other people can psychoanalyze.
What did I say?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question because I think it comes from, I think we all have sort of good sides and bad sides. We have like a shadow side and a side which is more kind of virtuous and so on. So I would say the good side of it is a drive to build something of worth, to be a good boss, to bless people and run a business that people enjoy and, things like that. Things like, being a landlord, it really, really gives me massive joy to be a landlord. I remember when we rented out our first property and the letting agent sent us some pictures of the property 6 months after the tenants had moved in, and you could see that the tenants were living there and they'd put their dining table out and their flowers were on the table and their washing was hanging up. And they're simple sort of terrace properties that I grew up in, and it just to do that, to be a blessing to people, that's the healthy side of entrepreneurship. That's the positive, virtuous, wanting to be productive and helpful to the world. And that's really motivated by my own personal faith as well, my own Christian faith. And then also there is always, I think, like this shadow side. And, there's an aspect of wanting to prove something to somebody and to be somebody and things like that. And there's good sides and bad sides to that. So I think it's a real mix, actually, rather than just being like positive.
Yeah.
I think it is your personality as well. You are very very work orientated, very achievement orientated, very resilient, very got very thick skin. I think you've got to have thick skin in this game, haven't you? Like not be easily offended or easily like thrown off course. I think you set your eye to the course and you go for it.
Yeah, and you learn stuff about yourself as well. Like what I've realized from being in Preston, when we came to Preston, it might be worth for context just saying that we expected to essentially run the church for the rest of our adult lives. That was what we expected to do. We're expected to move here and be carried out of Preston in a box at some point in 60 years' time. Because really, that's all we'd ever really known. And that's, you know, what we thought we would be doing. And what I realized about myself was that I get bored easily as well. You know, there's an aspect of my personality which likes to start things and is entrepreneurial and begins things. But then actually, after a while, I get quite drained. And perhaps, you know, in the context of the church, it was very healthy for the church to have a change of leadership because my tank was getting quite low and the church needed somebody who was a bit more stable and a bit more there for the long term. And I think that it's good to recognize your personality. Perhaps we'll come on to this a bit later, but for people who are listening, I think understanding how your personality fits into your entrepreneurial journey is really important, because unless you understand that, you might sometimes feel like you have to fit into a particular mold. And I think I felt like I had to fit into a particular mold with regards to church ministry, but it's very important to really lean into your skill set and to look at where you are strong, and also then, you know, to bring in people who do compensate for some of the gaps that you have as well in terms of your personality. So so I think
that's really cool. I wanted to ask a similar question to you, Hannah. What has the last 12 years look like before, like when you came to Preston? What did that look like?
Well, I think for me, the last 12 years, has been a lot more. I mean, we've been quite traditional roles, and Sam's been working and I've been at home with the kids, really. And we've chosen to like home educate our children for different seasons. So we've got 5 children, and our youngest 2 are in school at the moment. And then we've got 3 teen girls who are at home. So that's always been a pretty full-on job, obviously. So I've been mostly focused on that, but I think it was 3 years ago we were chatting about what we could do, because money is tight on a vicar's stipend, and we're trying to think, what could I do that was creative, that would be, because I'm a creative, and that's my gifting, and that's what I bring to the business. I haven't got Sam's like tenacity and like, let's go through this, but I'm a good ideas person. And so 3 years ago, we were like, what can we do? And we had this idea of setting up a coffee and donut shop, because I visited a friend in America a few times and just loved the coffee and donut culture. And I guess we had this idea we could just start this little thing. It would just try it, just see how it goes. We'll do it from home. We have this garage, and I'll be at home so I can, choose my hours. I can the kids can poke their head in if they need me, or if I'm on site, kind of thing. So that was really how we started it. Sam was full-time working, and I think I did maybe like 2 shifts a week, and then we had a few other people in on other days, and that was it really.
But that has been the journey in your movement away from like your role, well, not away from your role, but into another role, like the entrepreneurial aspect of the business has been like almost the step not away from motherhood. I'm trying to think of another.
No, it's been just a new season.
It's a new step.
It's a little bit older,
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So what I find interesting when Rebecca was telling me about like your coffee shop is actually in your garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was Sam's genius idea. We were thinking, because we just went on this one walk at the end of lockdown. A friend was looking after the kids, and we were like, what can well, we were walking down the high street, and all these shops closed from COVID, and we're like, it just needs like creativity and fresh ideas. And I think I was like, it'd be so fun, to have a coffee and donut shop. And then in this conversation, Sam was like, well, let's look at vans, because I was like, well, I couldn't run somewhere out of the house with the children. And he was like, let's look at mobile things. And then you were the one that went home and actually researched it. And then you were like, there's no pitches available in Preston. But it does say you can run a mobile business on private property. So he was like, what about our garage?
Oh,
Mobile business.
this story. This is fantastic.
And the story is, like, my biggest fear was the council turning up and saying, you're not allowed to do this. And lo and behold, we must have been trading for what, 2 months?
A bit longer, 4 maybe.
4 months. And the council came along and said, oh, you're not allowed to do this. You need to get planning permission. But I think sometimes ignorance can really help you out, because you just, if you knew everything you needed to know, and if you knew everything that would happen, you probably wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
And actually, each time something came along, we just navigated it. So the council came along and said, you apply for planning permission for this. And they were gracious, and they said, you can stay open and you have to apply for retrospective planning permission. And we got a bit of sort of not bad local press, but just not super favourable local press. And, you know, you realise that the sky doesn't fall in, and you know, you can get through those difficulties and those obstacles. So I think to some extent, you know, you don't need to know everything to get
100%.
started, and you don't need to give up your job today to get started. You can
100%.
do it alongside being a mum. You can do it alongside your full-time job and start slowly. And I think it's figuring out the right time to make the jump from your kind of traditional employment into something that is, your kind of self-employed employment. I think that's a really tricky thing, isn't it?
100%.
And thank you very much for that little soundbite there, Sam, using our phrase to make the jump. Nice little Instagram reel there. What you're saying is absolutely true. And Dave and I are finding this too. Obviously, we run Abide Property Management, offering landlords that management system where they can be hands off from their investment and still make a really good return. But we both still have, I have a side job that I do part-time. Dave is still full-time. So I completely echo what you're saying, Sam. Okay, so it sounds like we've now got the previous 12 years from both of you. I'm really keen to hear from you, Hannah, and Sam. I'd also love your input. What was it like when you officially made that jump? You opened the garage door and you said, we're open for business. Because I remember early Holy Grounds days having a couple of brief conversations with you, and you seemed a little bit like, oh, is this going to work out? Are we going to be able to, you know, have our coffee machine and sustain that, and etc. And just to see how far you've come is just incredible. So I'm keen to hear, what were those early days like?
Pretty chaotic. Very chaotic. all the things that we've now systematized that were so stressful, like always running low on oil for the donut machine and having to go to a food warehouse and do milk runs and go and buy ice from the local Sainsbury's halfway through the day because it had ice cream. Now we've got, you know, an ice machine and a milk delivery and an oil delivery.
Water. Like we weren't plumbed in.
We had
We had buckets
buckets
of water that fed the coffee machine.
And our first thing, like you said, Rebecca, was, are we going to make enough to cover the lease for this machinery? And that was like the first goal. And yeah, it was chaotic. And I think, you know, the whole identity piece of my identity being in a full-time mum, and then just being like that classic dilemma that, you know, many parents, especially women, have to figure out, you know, the role with work and home and all that jazz. And taking on staff, you know, is stressful. We're kind of at that point again. It's this really like vulnerable thing of inviting people into this thing that's so precious and so, and because it is in our home as well. Yeah. So there's definitely been periods of chaos, and we've learnt that now. I think and Sam is very good at being like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get bad before we grow. And I think that's what we have learned. And it was, you know, it's like that at the beginning. It was chaotic, and then you kind of pod along for a bit, and then you like something else changes. And because we were doing hot donuts to begin with, we had like a hopper and classic seaside hot donuts. But after a while, we're like, this isn't really our long-term vision. We really want to do a really high quality product that is like made from scratch. And so we moved to yeast raised donuts, which is, you know, more of a skilled thing, but you know, the people love the hot donuts, and so that was scary and hard to be like, we're not doing hot donuts anymore.
Yeah.
So it's been all these little chaotic moments, and then but Sam's been so good, and now as we're looking at opening our next property, Sam is like, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be stressful, it's gonna be chaotic, but then we'll come out the other side.
I think that's so encouraging to hear.
It really is. It really is. I wanted to ask, did you have any skills in like baking before like going into this venture at all?
No, not at all. And we're still not even like coffee snobs. You know, we like a good cup of coffee, but we're not, you know, we know our Greggs from our independent coffee shop. But like that, and actually just yesterday I was making donuts, and I had a friend with me, and she was like, did you learn how to do this? I was like, no. And I'm not a baker. I'm not like because I think the skills of a baker is someone that's very precise and very careful. I'm a really good cook, but I'm a slapdash creative, not a careful baker. So I'm blown away. I'm making these donuts that are really popular. I've figured out how to do it. You know, it's quite mind blowing. You're like, this is a simple process. I figured it out. It's working.
Well
just
done.
go with it.
So good. And Sam, did you have a point you wanted to jump in there?
I just think with business and entrepreneurship, like there's a couple of phrases that we found really helpful. One is kind of, you've got to give up to grow up. So often when you're wanting to get to the next level, even in the early stages, there's always something you have to give up in order to get to the next stage. And often that's to do with delegating things to people. So yeah, definitely the fragility in the early stages was around bringing staff members on board, and you're delegating responsibility to them for this, like Hannah says, this precious, fragile business that is so precious to us. And then, you know, you're looking for them to do that in order so that you can get to do something else, you know, and figure out how to plumb the water in, or get a better coffee machine, or make better donuts, or whatever it is. But there's always a giving up to get to the next stage. And then the other thing we often say to ourselves is like, let's find some chaos. Like if it gets quiet, you know, there needs to be a finding of a problem, and then it gets chaotic, and then it becomes more, you know, normal. You've grown
up a level.
Yeah, you've grown up a level. Things like that. I did a lot of research into like organizational stages. There's a really helpful book by a chap. I'll have to kind of send you it directly so it can go in the show notes or whatever it is that you guys do. But it's called Predictable Success by Les McEwen. And it goes through the 5 stages of organizational growth. And the stage that we've been at for, I guess, even with the church and then with our businesses and our property stuff, all of them have been in kind of what you would call early struggle. So early struggle is essentially, the goal of early struggle is get out of early struggle. Like it's hard, there's problems, everything feels new, fragile, difficult. And then you move out of early struggle into fun. And then we're kind of in that stage now. You know, the business is going well, it's profitable, it's paying our wage. We were opening a new location and And then you kind of want to keep moving the business forward and move out of fun. But to get out of fun, you have to move into white water, which is chaos and it's difficulty. And you have to bring in systems and processes and checks and balances and so on in order to get to stage 4, which is predictable success. And then there are a couple of other stages. But in essence, we've just really felt that journey. You know, when you're starting something new, it is early struggle. It's how are we going to pay the bills? It feels like there's a new problem. You've never dealt with it before. How do I find a builder to fix this roof? Or how do I find a coffee company that leases a machine to us and so on? It's really like high risk, high fragility. And I think 1 in 4 businesses essentially fail because they don't get out of early struggle. But it's the sort of encouragement is that if you keep persevering and you keep, you know, sort of overcoming each of those challenges and those chaotic periods, that actually you can move out of that into something that gets a lot more fun and enjoyable. And that's been the story of Holy Grounds, the coffee shop we run. That's been the story of the properties, the story when we were running the church. Yeah, so we're pretty good at early struggle and then get into fun. I don't know. We've never got through Whitewater. But yeah.
Well, we're going to invite you back next year to hear how Whitewater went.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100%. No, that's so helpful.
It really is.
And I'm
It
sure
really
we
is.
want to get on to property as well, Kafalat. Is there anything else we want to just dig in
I
a bit
wanted to
further?
ask, in terms of if someone wanted to set up their own coffee shop in their garage, what sort of startup costs could they sort of expect? Do you guys remember, like, sort of the costs that are involved in that?
Yeah, good question. I'd say you could get started with £5,000. So obviously the coffee machine is the biggest outlay you're gonna have, but you can take that on a lease basis. So I think we paid in the early days £300 a month for our coffee machine. We have a limited company, it all goes through the limited company, but often you have to be a personal guarantor. So that's the risk aspect, and that was the thing that we were perhaps most worried about in the early days. We got a really basic setup. We had a sort of a coffee what do you call it? Not desk, but
like a
counter.
Yeah, it was really cool because it was made from old pews, so it was very on brand for us. It's since been upgraded. It's now actually just a very big piece of furniture that we don't know what to do with.
I know, yeah.
And we got like a donut machine for £700 off eBay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Worked for a year and then it died a death. But it did what we needed to get going.
It did. It got us going. So you don't need loads, really.
No, you don't. And it is those like getting those systems in place as quick as possible. The things that were so stressful was like, we had this festival set up at first, and our waste was like it would sometimes like a couple of times like overflowed. So it was like a really busy Saturday, you had people, and then you suddenly realize like there's water pouring out, and it's those things. It's really worth paying attention to those things because they're the things that cause incredibly stressful moments, or you run out of milk, and so I think getting those basic systems in place, like milk, waste, just like everything kind of automated, is a huge stress reliever.
100%. The things that bring me the most joy are the fact that today the oil man came, he dropped off four oil tubs for the donuts, he took away the dirty oil,
to recycle.
The milkman dropped off all the milk this morning, and we just do not, it's like, what we keep saying is like we need to set and forget, like set up systems and forget them. You can do it in any industry. It's exactly the same in hospitality.
Preach it, Sam. Preach it.
Set and forget.
I just need to jump in here and interject because Dave and I have just spent about £700 on towels and linen and pillowcases and soap dispensers, and we were like, this feels like a lot. We're still in the early struggle. Do you know what? We can give that £700 worth of linen to these amazing cleaners we've just interviewed. In fact, we didn't even order it to our house. We said, what's your address? It's coming to your house. Right. And she can just let herself in, manage the linen, set the place up. We're relaunching our St. Helens property in April. And so I totally agree with you. You've got to systemize. Sometimes you've got to spend that bit of money to make your life easier and just get that system in place and to make your life as easy as possible. That's so helpful.
And it frees you up. It gives you essentially what you're buying there is time. You're buying thinking time, you're buying time to use more of your entrepreneurial skills, to find new clients, new customers, to market, whatever it is. All of it buys you time, which I've never really appreciated until the last few years, that time is our most valuable asset. It's not money. Money just buys you time. And it's so important.
Amazing. That's so helpful. I'm really keen to know, Dave and I, sometimes Sam and Hannah, we think about you and we go, how many businesses do they have?
I know. Yeah.
5? Is it 10? Before we jump into property, could you guys tell us sort of what comes under the Hague Collective?
Yeah, it's a good question. The main thing is the coffee shop. Okay. And then we've also got another limited company called the Hague Collective Property, which holds the rental properties. So that's the main thing. We did in the early days, we had a little furniture business which came under the Hague Collective. Our kids, actually, we're trying to kind of introduce them to entrepreneurial stuff. So one of our daughters had like a little brownie company under the Hague Collective. and Poppy did like artwork and stuff like that. So just kind of like there's a few different things. The main two are the coffee shop and the property company, and they're two separate sort of limited companies that at some point will become a group, but at the moment are distinct in their own right.
That's helpful. And Sam, my laptop is actually balanced on a table that you and your lovely son painted for us. So I'm living proof the products are good, guys. If the tables are half as good as the donuts, go and get the donuts right now. Brilliant. Well, Kafla, should we touch on property? Because we're property gals.
Yes. Oh, so in terms of like your portfolio, what does that look like at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it is definitely early struggle. So we've got we just buying our third buy-to-let property.
Congratulations.
And my approach, thank you very much. And my approach to it has been attempting really to buy 10 simple buy-to-let properties, just 2 3-bedroom terraced houses, in order almost to get used to the renovation process, to get used to the tenant management process. Mainly because as well, our sort of main chunk of our time is taken up with the business side of things. So we wanted just to, I guess, become comfortable with the process of buying, refurbishing, refinancing. So we feel very sort of early stages in that regard. But we've got at the moment the two properties rented out in a place called Fleetwood, which is near Blackpool. And they're very profitable. They're both rented out for £700 each at the moment. And the cash flow is sort of £500 profit on one, 400 on another. So it really helps income and things like that. So we really like that process of particularly bringing properties that have been perhaps undervalued and, they're not quite derelict, but they've just not been renovated in a long time. And then bringing those, I guess, to the market. So it's very much early days. I've not done any I've done some of the free training in property, which I found really helpful, but not a huge ton. You guys have done loads more than me, and I should.
More than likely. And Sam, you mentioned you like to buy, refurbish, refinance. For our listeners who might not know about that strategy, could you give sort of a brief overview of what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think somebody once said to me, there are 3 ways you can make money in property. One is in the buying aspect. So trying to buy properties that are below market value. So that's always been the goal. And I've only ever bought them through Rightmove. I mean, there are much more better strategies in terms of auctions and so on. But the buy aspect obviously is getting a good deal on purchasing a property that's hopefully below market value. And then the refurbishment is spending all the money that you spend to add value to that property. And a sort of good rule of thumb is essentially every pound you spend wants to add sort of £4 to the property in order to build the property's value. So, for instance, on the last property we bought, we purchased it for £73,000, but then we spent perhaps £15,000 on the refurbishment of that property. But then the end value was £110,000. So it was a really nice uplift in the property value. And then what you can do after you've refurbished is refinance. And essentially that's going to the bank and saying, look, this property is now worth significantly more. I'd like to take a mortgage out on the new value of the property and pull out some of that equity that you've kind of built into the property. And then it was great. We got a sort of about £30,000 dropped into our bank about 3 or 4 months ago, which was great. So it's kind of like getting your deposit back. And then we were able to use that to then go on and buy another property, which is fantastic. So that sort of momentum investing, where you're buying at a good price, that you're adding significant value to the property, and then you're able to use some of that cash in the property, the equity that's built up in the property, to do that again. It's such a simple. I mean, my mind was blown when I understood that very simple. I've just explained it in a really simple way, but when I heard it the first time, I was like, wow. And honestly, like absolute beginners, I literally learned it through watching YouTube videos. I've never been to any property training, and it absolutely works. The hardest, there's pitfalls and it's difficult and there's challenges. And I think the hardest thing is your emotions when you're renovating a property. You need to remember that it's not your property. It's an investment, and of course you want it to be a good standard, but you don't need to have the top
end,
everything. There's a few areas to improve, the kitchen, particularly in the bathroom perhaps, but controlling your emotions and sticking to a budget with the refurb, probably the hardest thing, but it 100% works.
And have you ever been knocked back from a valuation when you've gone back to the bank and said, we want to get a new mortgage? Is that process straightforward? Is it just filling out a form, or does someone have to come around and inspect the property?
Yeah, somebody comes around to inspect the property. I think the first one we did, we were asking for 105 or something like that, and they valued it at 95. So I remember it being a little bit of a disappointment, actually. The most recent one we've done was really straightforward, and we got the valuation we asked for, which was fantastic. But yeah, what they do is the bank will send round somebody to value the property, to compare that. And essentially what they do is they look at the property, say, right, this is a 2-bedroom terraced house. They look at similar properties within a half-mile radius. They compare, the sort of quality of the house and the type of the house with other houses in that area. And then they judge what would be a fair market value of houses that have sold within the last 6 months. So it's always houses that have sold. It's not houses that you see on Rightmove, because they could be advertised for anything. It's based, the valuation is based on the sold prices of houses that are similar within a half-mile radius in the last 6 months. And I've never actually met one of the valuers, because often they go around with the letting agent, or the tenant will let them in. But it's a relatively straightforward process.
That's so helpful to hear. And I have met a valuer, Sam. I met one last week.
Oh, amazing. What was it like?
It was a little bit nerve-wracking. We're trying to get a holiday let mortgage on this property to let it out as an entire place, say, serviced accommodation. And we want a really good price so we can pull some equity out. He came round with an iPad. He was a bit awkward, but he was impressed with the property. I said to him, how are we looking? Is it all right? And he said, I can't tell you. I'm under strict orders. I have to just speak to your mortgage lender. So I was like, all right, don't worry, Nigel. Nice to see you. And then we got an email a few days later saying he valued our property at nil.
Nil?
Nil.
What does it mean?
Exactly. So basically, for some reason, they decided to send out a valuer who can only value properties for buy-to-let and not holiday-let mortgages. So we scored a big fat nil on his spreadsheet. So we were mortified. You know what it's like in business. There's always a solution. There's always another option. So we've got another valuation hopefully going to happen in the next couple of weeks, and we are praying that it goes smoothly. But so Sam, it was a bit anticlimactic. Don't hold your hopes up for meeting a valuer. It's not that exciting. And also, we have rats in our loft at the moment. When he said, can I see inside your loft? My heart just sunk to my knees. I was like, no. It's like he just wanted to open the hatch and check up just visually. He didn't want to actually go in.
What a relief.
Wow. So how did you guys fund your first deal then? Where did the initial capital come from?
Some of it was savings, and some of it was a gift from family. We were buying, I think we needed about a £15,000 deposit for the first property that we bought. We bought it for £60,000. So that really, really helped us. And the money that was gifted from a family member was someone who had done property as well. So their kind of help and support and advice has been super helpful. And it's that whole adage that, your network is your net worth. I think just in any entrepreneurial venture, be it property or otherwise, having people around you who can essentially mentor you, whether that's formally or informally. And often that's just grabbing a coffee with somebody and saying, look, I'm trying to do this renovation project. Like, you've done a few, like, how did you find it? Those kind of conversations are absolutely golden. And often you find you get advice, but you also get introductions to different tradespeople, other people who have faced similar challenges and so on. So yeah, that was super helpful, and it just gets you going. And I think, that was great for us, wasn't it? Having, obviously, that was a huge blessing. And then, we obviously want to pass that on to our kids. We want to pass that on, be a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was really, and I've said this to them, to the people who have given us the money. It was like life-changing, really. That process of buying that house was something that I'd put off for ages, just because I thought buying a house was so complicated.
Right.
And there's jargon, there's things to overcome.
Yeah.
But we really, we did it, and it was a real sort of, again, a bit of a pivotal moment, wasn't it, in our journey, seeing how that worked. And it almost introduces you to, I guess, some of the principles of finance and how it works, and investing in assets, not liabilities. That whole journey for us has been a big one, isn't it?
Yeah. And do you guys have a specific patch you invest in at the moment?
At the moment, all of our properties are in Fleetwood, mainly because there's a really good rental yield in Fleetwood. Samuel Leeds wrote a book called Buy Low, Rent High.
Rent High.
Read it, and often I quote book titles because I feel like they encapsulate everything you need to know about the book. Buy houses that are cheap in price and the rents are high. So Preston's really interesting because the rents are very similar to Fleetwood, but the house prices are significantly higher than Fleetwood and sort of Blackpool area. So what we were looking for, I guess, is places. And really, places like Fleetwood is exactly, you often say this, is exactly like where I grew up. That sort of house, the houses we're buying are exactly, they're my kind of jam. That's where I grew up.
3-bed, mid-terrace?
I grew, mid-terrace, end terraces, just sort of ideal first homes, stuff like that, for
two
people.
Up, two down.
Two up, two down.
Two down, yeah.
Absolutely. And, they're solid. And it's kind of that sort of patch is great for us. We'd love to buy in Preston. We'd love to move on to more adventurous strategies, HMOs, serviced accommodation, as time allows. The way it sort of works at the moment is the business is doing incredibly well. It's generating profit, and we're able then, at some point in the future, to shift money as a loan from property A to property B. So company A to company B, which will allow us to buy more properties.
More.
So, it's good.
No.
Brilliant.
Go on.
I wanted to ask Hannah, how involved in the property business are you? Because I know you're a brilliant.
About to ask that.
Yeah, and I often see you when you're buying a property. I see you come in, Hannah, and you're doing some painting and decorating. How much input do you have?
Not a lot.
A lot more than you realise.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean that like you doing that decorating in the So Rebecca saw Hannah on the Instagram story decorating, and that was when I was basically a bit of a brick wall. I was like, I need you to come. So
I think me and the girls have done it as well, haven't they? Come and helped you out. It's more been moral support. I think that's sort of like when you've needed a hand.
But you support it and you back that property strategy.
100%. I'm honestly in awe, because I just think Sam's just got an incredible head for this, an incredible grasp on it, and incredible tenacity in it. So I'm just like joyfully cheering him on from the sidelines. We all go get fish and chips to celebrate a new property.
Every time we buy a house, we go and buy it.
But I think the girls helped probably more than I did with painting and the house clearances. And
but it's great to get them involved.
100%.
Because I think
100%.
I wish I would have learned so much of this. I'm 39 on Sunday, on Easter Sunday. So I just wish I would have learned it when I was 19, or when I was younger. And it's the whole thing about, they just don't teach financial literacy in schools. And, everyone's got their own kind of, sort of complicated relationship with finances and money, and we're exactly the same. But I think we've been on a real journey with it, and actually involving the kids. And actually, that's why I say you don't realise how much of a support you've been, because you really need people who complement your skills. Someone just to process stuff with. And often I've come back and just explained stuff, and you've been helpful. in that, and then just having someone to come along and like put wallpaper up or remove an old sofa from a house, like it just makes the world of difference.
Oh,
That's
that's really nice. How important is social media for you guys?
Well, for our holy grounds, it's been incredibly important for the journal business. Yeah, we didn't think it would be, because we just thought, oh, we're just going to be like a local business. You know, we don't need to get big on socials. So, you know, so week 1, week 2, we weren't we were thinking, oh, we don't really need to do much on social media. But almost instantly, a sort of local food blogger picked up on us and came to visit us the first week, and then she shared, and all of a sudden there was this momentum, and we've realized it is really key. I sort of wish it wasn't, but it is. And if we've one thing that we've really realized, and I find this hard as a creative, because I think Sam is very steady. I'm much more ebb and flow, and you know, creativity comes and then it doesn't. And but we found that if we are feeling creative, or if I'm having good ideas, and then we're sharing them in a fun way on socials, it has a massive impact.
Wow.
We get more people the next day, literally. Like it.
Wow.
So it's a challenge, because it's a challenge to stay inspired, and actually that one thing we have done, we started hiring a photographer last May, and she started coming to take photos of our donuts and coffee once a month, which has been amazing. And we've now just taken on a couple of guys to do some video content, because we know we need more reels and TikTok, and that's a bit over our head.
Wow. Honestly, that's real elevation there.
Oh, that is incredible. You're knowing when to scale. I'm a marketer, so I'm like all here for it. I'm like, yes, go for it. Well done. That is fantastic.
And what I find interesting, what you said, is when people tend to post on social media, they see sometimes they see reactions in terms of like they get a little bit more business. But for you guys, you physically see people coming into the shop just because of social media, because most things is done online, transactions are made online, but you guys physically like 100% see people.
So last one example, which we've now tried to do a few times, on Bank Holiday Monday at the end of August, we were like, oh, let's just do something really fun for today, one off. So we did like we called it Last of the Summer Dough, and it was a bit like an Eton mess, quite epic, with cream and fresh strawberries. And we between us did filming of it and stuff. And then so many people came the next day, and they were like, have you got the cream donut? Have you still got it? I ran down the street, my mum wants one, like, you know that. And now every time, like now since February, we've been trying to do something most weekends, and there has been correlation with people. We now open up to a queue often on a Sunday, which but it's a correlation with this weekend only. So there's a scarcity thing. There's this one-off creative thing, and people have seen it. They're like, I saw it on Instagram. Have you got it?
Oh, wonderful. You guys are harnessing that. I wanted to just briefly touch on, and we're coming into land. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys already had or previously rather had a second site, but you decided to close that. Is that right? And if it is, can you share just briefly about that, and also share any behind the scenes plans that you're comfortable with sharing with your new second site?
Yes. Oh, that is so. Thank you for bringing that up, because essentially we learned so much through that. We attempted to launch a second site. We called it a different name, but essentially it was the same thing, coffee and donuts. It was on the other side of town. So we're on one side, there's shops on the other side. And it just didn't work. Like we ran it from 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much learning, and I think for us the location is probably the prime reason it didn't work. Yeah. But a huge thing was just that we were already stretched. Sam was still working full time. I was still full time with the kids, and so then we had to pay people to be there. So we were paying staff. Normally, if you're expanding your own business, you're the one that goes, and you know, when you start, you don't have to pay yourself in the same way. And we couldn't replicate ourselves. We couldn't. I think it was actually an incredibly stressful few months. I think it's like the most stressed I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
Because just this feeling of being very stretched thin. So in some ways it's hard to know how it could have gone if we'd had more capacity, but that was a huge deal, I think. Just the and it was a mistake to call it something different. That didn't make sense, really.
Yeah, so that was one of the learnings, to actually build on the momentum
brand.
Holy Grounds is really recognizable in Preston now. People know it locally, and I think that could have helped. The location was a huge thing. It just wasn't the right demographic. It was near a bus station rather than we're sort of near offices and parks and sort of the city centre. So that was one aspect, the location. And the other thing was just, like you say, we were stretched already, so we were overstretched. And it's the law of the elastic band, isn't it? It's kind of what you want is you want healthy tension in your workload. If you're overstretched, the rubber band could snap, and that's where if it's too slack, it's too easy. You need to put in something else. But we were already solid stretched, and we overstretched.
Right.
And actually, what we realized was, and we had good employees who went there. Don't get me wrong, but nothing beats the owner mindset. When you're sat there and no one's buying coffee and donuts, you're on the streets, like, come and get coffee and donuts. They give out examples because you're the owner. You own it. You've got stake. You've got skin in the game, a stake in the ground. When you're an employee, you get paid £10 an hour, whether one person comes or 1,000.
Exactly.
And it's not, that's not to downplay employees. We need employees. We need them for most of our lives, but the owner mindset is important.
Absolutely. And so in terms of your new second location, how is that going? Are you allowed to share anything behind the scenes? This will probably be going out in April, May.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, we are. We should be open by then.
Hopefully we'll be up and running by then.
Yeah, so it's in Leyland, which is about 5 miles from Preston. It's
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it's in Leyland. So it's very near a park. We're near a park here in Preston. And it's a very small little unit, which is what we were looking for. Essentially, it's a little bit like a hub and spoke model that we're going for. We're going to make donuts centrally here in Preston. We've got a shop, but then the idea is that we can then take the donuts out to several shops, maybe 7, 8 shops, but make the donuts in one place, if that makes sense. But then really, you're kind of the profit margins are brilliant on that, in the sense that the shop will have one staff member running the shop, and the donuts will just be delivered in the morning in the same way the milk is and all that kind of stuff. And
systems.
Right. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah.
Nice, guys. And
that
when
is
you
amazing.
Be up and running, what month did you say? Sorry.
I think, well, we're aiming for 2 months, aren't we? So I think by the end of May, we should be open. And I was saying this on a podcast, so hopefully it'll be true. It's giving us some accountability. End of May.
Amazing. Fantastic.
I wanted to know how profitable is the donut business. So what's sort of like an average month? What does that look like for you? You can give you don't have to give specifics, just like
in
estimates.
terms of profitability, I think people aim for 10%, and I think we definitely get at least 10% profit in the business. I think sometimes it's hard to measure because we take a salary ourselves and we pay one staff member.
Also, another complexity is just the fact that because it's in our property, we pay like the electricity and stuff is like swallowed up in our monthly bills. It's astronomical. So it's quite, we don't pay rent on it because it's our house, but that kind of thing makes it a bit more.
It does, but I think it can be a really profitable business done right. And I think also the other thing is the niche, not falling into the temptation of doing everything. We just do coffee and donuts. You keep it really simple. There's a good profit margin. I think, they say something like, you want a quarter of the cost of your coffee or your donut to be the cost, and then the rest is essentially gross profit and then net profit as all the other things are deducted. So it definitely is profitable. We turn over on an average month about 20. This month it'll be about £24,000.
Wow,
which is really good for a.
That is amazing.
And
hats off, guys. Well done.
That's great. So it's projected to do way over 300,000 just at this site, and then more in the future. So it's really good. and
That's amazing.
It pays us, but as Hannah says, there's a lot of costs, complexities involved in running that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And
no worries.
I've got a rounding off question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it's sort of two-pronged. What advice would you give to someone who sat at home thinking, I really want to try, but I'm too scared?
Good question. What would you say?
Well, I think that whole mindset of realizing that you actually have to want to fail if you want to grow. And it's so scary. It's a horrible feeling to fail, but the reality is you're actually never gonna see anything grow in your life if you're not willing to fail. And Sam and I are both quite new at the gym this last year, and just realizing that you're actually never going to get stronger if you're not willing to fail at an exercise. And so I guess that's been something we've really embraced, is in anything, like, it is always worth giving it a go, because you don't know what's going to fly and what's not. You are going to fail. Somewhere along the line, you're going to fall flat on your face. But that is then how you're going to fly and get on to the next, see this growth, see this adventure. So I would always say, go for it. And and be ready for the fail. It's okay. It's part of it. You can't get there without it.
Yeah, 100%. I would echo that massively. And I think that's perhaps connected to the risk aspect, because risk sometimes will include failure. But I think in any new venture, and as you get going in entrepreneurship and business, there is always a risk aspect. And, in the early days for us, that was, we're going to end up with this coffee machine that's £300 a month for 5 years or whatever it was. Wow. That's a risk. And then you take on a new location, and that's signing a lease, and that's a risk. Yeah. And, you take on a new staff member, and, that's a risk. So I think appetite for risk, not reckless risk, it's always got to be calculated. And I think that's sometimes where we are so incredibly different. I cannot stress that enough. But that appetite for risk is there, and there's often a really helpful balancing out that we kind of provide for one another. So I think we often say there's no way I could have done the coffee shop, and there's no way you could have done the coffee shop, but together we can do the coffee shop. So I think something around risk is important for people as they think about a new venture and looking at bringing team members in who are different to you.
Yeah, that is huge. Having a team that's different to you. So if you're on your own, and you've got a wild idea, try and find someone that's different from you, that will be able to keep speaking life to you and encouraging you, and is going to see the whole thing differently from you.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
That is amazing.
Way to close.
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Honestly, it's been such a pleasure to have you both on. We appreciate you. Dave and I just so appreciate your friendship, and we're cheering you guys on.
Likewise, we're so honoured to talk to you both. Thank you so much. What an honour.
Honestly, we'd love to have you back next year to find out how things are going.
Absolutely. I've got a question actually. Rebecca, have you tried their donuts?
I have.
What would you rate it out of 10?
10. 100% 10. No, they're weighty but fluffy but nice, and there's all these random flavors. It's like something you'd get in London. It's 10 out of 10. And I know I'm gonna go off on a tangent. Go and buy one. No, do you know what happened? When I was washing my hair yesterday, I was thinking I'm gonna post Kafalat one.
I would love to try one. I would love to try it.
I don't know if you're allowed to post. Are you allowed to post?
You can, do it. Yeah, I'll come and use it.
Yeah, I'll fresh on the day, one. So you might have to, if Rebecca does post you one, you have to put it in the oven or something to give it a new lease of life.
Yeah.
Like it first class signed for delivery.
Yeah.
Oh, well, bless you guys. Thank you so much. Yay. Thank you. Well done, Sam and Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you. And if people want to reach out to you, check out your donuts, how can they reach you?
Well, we're Holy Grounds, at Holy Grounds _ is our Instagram.
And at Holy Grounds _ is our TikTok.
Is it? Okay, yeah. Watch you. I mean, by May,
May, we'll be smashing TikTok.
Be banging on TikTok. Yeah. Absolutely.
And my name's Sam Haig on Instagram. I think if you put that in, it's is it Sam _Hague _ or something like that.
Yeah.
And your Instagram as well, Hannah.Hague. So yeah, you can find us on socials.
Perfect. And I must say, your Holy Grounds Insta is very aesthetically pleasing. So
Thank
please
you.
check that out.
That's what
It's
we want
very
to hear. Thank
aesthetically
you.
pleasing.
That's very
Beautiful.
kind.
No, that's amazing. And if people want to see my journey, it's Banjo Estates. So Banjo, like the instrument, Estates. And if you want to see little clips of this episode, it will be at Making the Jump Pod on Instagram.
Yes, and if you'd like to follow my journey as we expand from having an Airbnb in our house to expanding our rent to service to accommodation business, we are Abide Property Management on Instagram. Guys, thank you so much. We hope you had a lovely evening and looking forward to catching up with you soon.
We'd love that.
Thank you.
Lots of love. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.